Welcome to the Intentional Household Podcast. Today, we're talking about what it really takes to grow a long-lasting partnership or marriage. I'm joined by Gina and Gary Goerke, who have two sons. They have built a business together and have just celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary. Today, they are joining us to talk about how they have kept their relationship strong and have even grown together over time. Gary and Gina, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining. As someone who doesn't see you day to day, but we have gone on some vacations together, I very much see you two as two individuals who are still in love after 31 years. You clearly have an admiration for each other and, most importantly, a respect for one another. So I really wanted to get you on to the podcast so that we can hear and learn about your marriage and any sort of work that you have put into it, because we know that marriages don't just end up this way. So any advice that we're able to take away from you so that we as listeners can work on our own partnerships and marriages is always appreciated. So thank you.
Well, Laura, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
grateful to be invited on and that you and your listeners are interested in hearing what we have to share.
Mm-hmm.
And we're certainly impressed by you and Alex and the life that you're building and your commitment to sharing and helping other people have a brighter future and a brighter life.
Yeah, we just love you guys. We think you're a great couple too. And again, thank you for inviting us to this. And we're excited to share. And yeah, hopefully you make an impact in some other people too in their marriages, and especially if they're entrepreneurs too, and what's worked for us over, for many years.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So let's start from the very beginning. How did you two meet, and what do you remember about your early days together?
Well, my version is, we met, May of 1992. So over almost 34 years ago.
I can't do the math.
I know, it's a long time. Yes. Anywho, I was working full time at a retail store and putting my way through college. It was hard. I was just working 30 to 40 hours a week and then full time schooling. And so I was really busy. And at the time, I had just got off work and I got a phone call from a girlfriend who had asked if I wanted to come out to a party, which was about 15, 20 minutes away, and wanted to meet this guy she was dating. And I said, "Oh, Chris, I'm so tired. I just got off work. I worked a long shift." And she's like, please come to this party. And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "You know what? I'll come out. I'll meet this guy you're dating, and then I'm leaving. I'm not going to stay." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, no, just come on out for a minute." And I said, "Okay." So I went out there, sat down, and now mind you, I just got off work. I was in a sweatshirt, jeans or shorts. I didn't care what I looked like. I was just going to go meet this guy that she was dating. So I sat down and got a chance to meet. His name was Bob. Her name was Chris. And so we were talking, and then all of a sudden Gary walks in, and he walks in a full-blown suit at a party, summer party. So I'll let you take it from there. Why you were?
Yeah, why I was in a suit.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was working full-time for Ford Motor Company and Information Technology. I was attending the University of Michigan part-time to finish up my degree, and I had a side business going. So that particular evening, I had gone to my boss at Ford Motor Company, gone to his boss, to his fourth wedding. And I did that primarily for political reasons. He was taking me under his wing and guiding me through the halls of a Fortune 50 company.
So you figured you had to go.
And I figured I had to go, that it would be prudent to go. Mm-hmm. I wasn't dating anybody at the time, so I asked a friend of mine who happened to be my recent ex-girlfriend's best friend. And she was like, "Yeah, sure, but let's go." So we attended this fourth wedding. It was a short affair, as you can imagine. The reception ended quickly. And afterwards, Angie said, "Hey, Gary, a mutual friend of ours is having a house party. You want to drop by?" And I thought, sure, let's do that. So we both show up to this house party dressed for a wedding, me in a suit and of course, her in her dress. And when I walked in, my ex-girlfriend and her sister and their entourage was there. I wasn't interested in really hanging out with them, so I made a beeline to the first friend that I saw that wasn't them, and that happened to be Bob. And so there's Bob and Chris and Gina sitting on the couch.
Yeah, so I was sitting there, and I looked at them, and I thought, okay, well, again, I wasn't thinking anything because I wasn't looking. So I said, nice to meet you, and I excused myself to go to the restroom. And then you said...
I was thinking something because I looked at Chris, who I just met, and I can still see her face today when I asked, is your friend seeing anybody? And she smiled and went, no. and I thought, oh, this girl is stunningly beautiful, and there's no way she's going to leave without me trying to get a date.
So I came out of the restroom, and I was like, okay, nice meeting everybody. I wanted to get home. I was tired. And Gary asked me if he could walk me to my car, and it was dark. It was late. So I said, okay, sure.
And that was 1992, so that wasn't as creepy as it would be now.
Yeah, no, yeah. So anyway, so I said, yeah. So he walked me to my car, and then he said, can I ask you for your number? Because I'd love to take you out on a date. And the first thought in my head was, oh, this would be great because I would love to have a nice dinner because I was so broke. I mean, I was eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so I looked at it as a free dinner instead of, I wasn't even thinking beyond that. Like, I just wasn't looking. But I thought, sure, I'll go for a nice dinner.
And using sales terminology that I know now, so I was excited because Gina just went from a prospect to a lead. And I had permission to follow up on the lead, and that was pretty exciting.
So he called me a week later, and you invited me, and we ended up with people from my work. We ended up going to a festival in Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Top of the Park, which was like an art festival and music and movies. They had outdoor movies at the time, and I asked him to join me with our friends, and we had a great night. And
I was so anticipating this date that I went into work. And I wanted to ask her out on a date that was something different than just a movie and dinner. Mm-hmm. And I started asking around, and I remember distinctly one of my coworkers showing me a flyer for this event, this Top of the Park.
Yeah. So it was just really wild that we both, first of all, we met that first night just by chance. It was serendipity, and it was meant to be. Yeah. And then he ended up having that same invite or that event flyer that I invited him to. It was just like, wow, everything just seemed to align.
I think I invited you to it.
Okay. Well, then I said, yeah, we're going.
That's right. Because you were going anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. So,
but
yes.
It was clearly meant to be love at first sight. But Gina, I want to know, after you guys met at the party, and there was a week in between, because I think these days people wouldn't wait a week. Did you think about Gary at all?
I did. There was something special, but again, I wasn't trying to get my hopes up because I really wasn't looking, because I had been already in a long-term relationship, and I had just broken off maybe 3 months prior, and I was ready to graduate, from the university and move on and actually move out of Michigan and go somewhere warmer. So I was already focused on my goals, and I did not expect that. And so when we connected, I was like, I don't know, there was just something special. But I knew our second date, which we ended up doing because it was right around July 4th. We went to a fireworks show, and after that, I thought, he's the one. I knew it. I just knew it. And I never thought about that with anybody.
And really, Laura, it was a week back at that time. That was kind of like the standard for not being too aggressive, but still showing interest. But ghosting still existed. It was just, maybe a little longer timeline.
Yeah.
And because there were or cell phones weren't prevalent, there was usually some back and forth logistically in order to connect with somebody over the phone.
Yeah.
But the concept was the same, which was you didn't want to be, as a guy, you didn't want to be too aggressive, too needy, but you wanted to show enough interest to show that you were interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you nailed it.
He did.
It worked out.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're constantly juggling work, family, and home life, only to end each day exhausted and overwhelmed? At Intentional Household, we specialize in optimizing your household so that it functions like a well-oiled machine. We're not just about hiring help, we design a system where everything works together seamlessly. Imagine more time for what energizes you and less for what drains you. Learn how we can help you take back control at intentionalhousehold.com. Let's fast forward, because I know you as an entrepreneur, Gary. At the time when you two met, it sounds like you did have a side hustle, but you were working for a company. So if we fast forward to 10 years into your marriage, I believe you started your company. Can you talk about the impact that had on your relationship in the early days of starting your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Although it was 10 years before I started Clarity, I was always entrepreneurial, but I didn't know it. I didn't realize it. So I always had side hustles.
Okay.
We always want to impress other people when we first meet them. And on that first date, my way of impressing Gina was, hey, I work at Ford Motor Company. That's impressive. Back in the day, that was really a score, big deal. I attend the University of Michigan, which an elite school. And then, I said I had a business, my side hustle. What she didn't know was, well, I was a contractor at Ford. I was attending a satellite campus part-time at the University of Michigan. And the side hustle, the business I owned was a multi-level marketing sales business. Not what people at that time considered a real business. Mm-hmm. Being in a multi-level meant that I wanted to recruit as many people to join the network as possible. And Gina, after a few dates, became a prospect for me, a business prospect, and a girlfriend. Yeah. The girlfriend was first. I want to make sure that was secured.
Yeah.
Because that was most important for you. That was most important.
Yeah.
What emerged out of that is that Gina and I had really the opportunity to start talking about what our future life would look like right from the onset, because that multi-level business taught to have dreams and goals and aspirations. So I brought that into our relationship, but what it also brought into our relationship was the idea of personal and professional growth, that we become the person based on the books we read, the video content we consume, and the people we associate with. So right from like pre-marriage.
Well, we were in our early 20s.
Yeah.
We were learning all this.
Well, right. When we were dating, we ascribed to that.
Yeah.
And would read a biography or a business book or a self-help book monthly. That habit became ingrained with us. The video and audio content was always focused on improvements. Today there's thousands or tens of thousands of podcasts available for people to choose from. Back in the 90s, it was really rare. There was like Tony Robbins and Earl Nightingale and a few other speakers on the circuit, but that's what we dug into and would listen to and learn from and be formed by. And then we'd associate with people who were like-minded about having a bigger future.
So we were very fortunate to have that experience, and that's where it set us off, because it was great to learn all that in our early 20s in our relationship.
Wow. Yeah. And just as you're forming the relationship, you're doing this together.
Yes. We were set as a team. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the foundational on what the takeaway is for anybody is that Gina and I have always been a team in everything we do. Everything. We're a team. And we enjoy that. Because of that, we're close. I mean, we're best friends, we're business partners, we're husband and wife, we're parents, we're lovers, we're all of it.
Yeah.
So we talked about having the company Clarity Voice. And Gina, you did have a role in the company as well. Can you tell us a bit about your involvement in the company?
Yeah.
Let me share a little bit of backstory.
Okay.
So I was working full-time, not at Ford. I had moved on in my career to other places. But I did have a fantastic position with a great company. I think I had been there probably 7 or 8 years at that point. I can't speak high enough about the organization I was with and the people who I worked with. It was wonderful. But I had this gnawing sense that I wanted more and could do more. So I always had my radar up for an opportunity. And one came up that I saw in voice over IP, voice over internet, taking voice over internet out to small and medium businesses. So it started as a side hustle, and about 6 months into it, I started seeing a bigger picture. And I went to Gina and I said, Gina, hey, I think there's more here than just a side hustle. What I'd like to do is mortgage the house, run up the credit cards, and then quit my job and build this business. But we're partners. What do you think?
And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom, which I was fortunate. I'm really grateful for that. And our kids were in private school. So it was like, okay, wow, this is kind of crazy. But at the time, I knew Gary was not happy. I mean, he loved the company he worked with, but he just wasn't happy because he wanted to do something on his own. I saw that. And we were in our mid-30s at the time. And I thought, you know what? Why don't we go for it? And if we fail, we can start over again. And I just didn't want him to regret when he turned 50 that we didn't try. So I don't know. It just came over me. And I don't know if it's naivety or what, but I said, okay, sure, let's do it. And
you literally said, yeah, sure. If we fail, we're young enough, we can always start over.
Yeah.
If it was naivety, I'm glad that you were naive.
And I'm glad we did it, of course. So now, but going back to your question, how it started was basically he was working still full time at this other company. He would come home, and out of our basement at the time, he was working on the side hustle. Well, we started getting customers, and he was doing it all. Gary was doing the tech support. He was doing sales. He was doing, accounting. He was doing it all. And he's like, I can't do all this, and I need help. So he looked at me and he said, hey, I know you've never worked in telecom before, but, can you help me out here, basically? And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but all right, I'll be willing to help. So he would joke and say I was cheap labor because I was free, basically. So yeah, again, it's that team mentality, and I believed in what he was doing. Yeah, I did whatever. He just showed me. And of course, I made so many mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just was like, let's do it. And eventually he quit his job, and the business did not take off like we had thought because 2008 happened, in the recession. So that was a pretty scary time for us because we almost did lose everything.
Yeah.
So that really brought us even closer together because we just decided that we're in it 100% or we're going to lose everything, and let's just keep going. And then
it really tested our faith and whether our faith was just something that we paid lip service to or if we truly believed.
Yeah.
I remember when we started the company and when Gina said, oh, if it doesn't work out, we can always start over. What you think is, oh, we just file for bankruptcy and start over again. And that's true. That's what the laws in our country allow. There's not indentured servanthood anymore, at least in the Western world. So you can do that. If it doesn't work out, you take a risk. It doesn't work out. You can always file for bankruptcy and pick yourself up and regroup. But what doesn't get said is the amount of emotional stress that you go through when you can't make your bills, and you're failing, and it's a tremendous burden, and one that really rips at our self-worth. And it was through that experience that we came to realize, A, we're not in control, and B, God has an outcome that is better than what we think or what we're planning, even if we don't necessarily like God's plan.
Yeah.
And through that, it relieves some of the stress that the future is going to be okay. It might be really uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
There's hope.
Yeah.
Is what it is. There's hope for a future.
Yeah.
Hope goes very far.
Yes, it does.
Do you wish there was a way to focus more on your family and personal goals without sacrificing your career? Intentional Household examines your entire household ecosystem to pinpoint inefficiencies and offer targeted solutions. By the time we're done, you'll have a system that frees you from draining tasks and gives you time to live intentionally. Learn more at intentionalhousehold.com. Like you said, you also had your sons at the time. They were in private school. You started working together professionally. How were you able to manage your personal relationship while having the professional relationship? And what listeners don't know about you two is that you're very different. But somehow you were able to work together and have a marriage at the same time.
Most people don't know. Unless they know me, they don't know that Gina is actually a saint, because that's the only way that she could live with me. Remember what that one lady said?
Oh, yeah, we had one lady say to us when we were in the multi-level, she looked at Gary or looked at us and said, "How do you live with him?" And I was like, "Oh, I think he's great. I don't know what." Anyway, I think going back to what Gary shared earlier with our exposure to the multi-level business and being around other like-minded people and seeing how we saw people modeling what a couple should, how to work together as a team, as collaborating. Yeah, we watched them and we saw people who were 30, 40 years older than us. Here we are in our, early 20s, mid 20s, and we saw people who were in their 50s and 60s, and we just admired that because we never seen that in our own families, a couple working, mom and dad working together like that. So I just love that. I thought, yeah, I mean, as you know, Gary, his personality is more of a dominant personality. He's, focused on when he has a goal. And I'm more of like, I just want everything organized, and I want peace, and I want to make sure everyone's happy. And I think that actually plays, if I had his same personality, we would kill each other, But it's great that we're opposite. Yeah. But we already knew a lot of that from those early days and learning about self-growth and self-help and those kinds of things that we knew our strengths and weaknesses. Let me say it wasn't ever perfect at times. I mean, there was days that like I wanted to kill him. He wanted to kill me. We literally worked at one point across from each other. We had a big desk in our basement, and I mean, I'm trying to do work, he's trying to do work, and we literally wanted to come over and strangle each other.
Kids were at school.
We were like, it was not pretty sometimes, but you know what? We worked through it. I finally ended up getting another desk of my own. So we had a different room, so we weren't next to each other, but we just made sure that like when we were together, we worked, and then we tried when the kids got home and when it was dinner time, trying not to talk about work. Sometimes it was very hard, though, especially if there was things that needed to be addressed. But we really tried to make sure that was family time and not business. We tried. So.
Yeah, we had big dreams. And we still have big dreams.
Yes.
Dan Sullivan talks about always make your future bigger than your past. That's what we have always subscribed to, even before Dan, or we knew of Dan Sullivan and strategic coach.
Yeah.
And there's only 24 hours in a day, and we prioritized our time. We put our faith first.
Yep.
The second was we put our family and family time.
Mhm.
And then third was chasing our dream.
Yeah.
So what we didn't do, or what I'm going to put it this way, because success in anything requires sacrifice. And the sacrifice for us was that we didn't have our own activities. So I have friends that were out in golf leagues, and my golf game is really bad still because that just didn't make the cut ever. I couldn't do that. There were events that Gina would have liked to have done for herself, hobbies for herself. That didn't make the cut. So we did what we could, but usually what made the cut were those three: faith, family, and business focus.
Because you set the priorities and you defined what mattered most to you at the time.
Yeah.
Correct.
And we knew what we were looking to achieve. We pictured the outcome. What's our faith life going to be like in 5 and 10 and 20 years? What type of family do we want in 5 and 10 and 20 years? And what do we want our financial future to be like in 5, 10, and 20 years?
And I'm sure having done that, I mean, from the very beginning of your marriage, it would be amazing to see how some of that has come true. You've made it happen based on writing that down on paper and taking the time together to do that planning.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and there's a flood of things that come to mind, notwithstanding anything material. After 31 years, we're still married. We still like each other. Not only do we still like each other, because that kind of sounds like, oh, we tolerate each other. No, we actually enjoy each other's company and doing things together.
Yeah.
So that was written.
I just want to add, sorry to cut you off, Gary, but I think anyone who's in your presence can see that. That is very obvious about you two, that you genuinely enjoy each other's company and you want to do things together.
Yeah. I think when you find your best friend and someone that, I mean, we've been through a lot. I mean, we don't have time to tell you the whole story, but I mean, it was tough in those days, in the early days with the business, especially. And then when you are under such financial stress, and it puts a lot of stress or strain on your relationship. But I think I'm so grateful. I know by us going through all that, it brought us closer together, stronger than ever. I think if we had quick success in our business, honestly, I think we would be two different people chasing, materially, whatever. And we would not be as strong in our faith. We would not be strong in our marriage and our family. I'm so grateful we went through a lot of hard times. I think that's because we've been through it together. That's why it's like, I wouldn't want to hang out with anybody else but him because, I just love it. I love being with him. I love how he continues to want to grow, and he's influenced me to want to continue to grow. And we just do it together. And it's like, we just want to keep being better in our relationship and our family and our everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. So we just have that same mindset, I think. So,
well, that's great. Because I was going on the note of growth. I was going to ask if there was ever a point where one of you felt like you were growing in different directions or maybe growing at different rates.
Yes, for sure. I can just say for Gary, as you know, he's been part of Coach, and I know you guys are part of that too. And when he started with Coach, when we were in the multi-level business, we were on the same page, kind of, I would say. Yeah. But when he started building his real business, Clarity, and started going to Coach, he just went from this to exponentially, like way beyond. And he was talking about terminologies of things in Coach, which I just wasn't familiar with. And he was sharing. And of course, I was working at Clarity, not in a more, management position. It was more business and billing and things like that. So I was behind the scenes, but I saw Gary just go from this to this. And I was like, whoa, I felt kind of left behind. Because he was going and doing all this. And I wasn't familiar with that. But it was never like Gary came back and went, oh, he wasn't kind of like, he wanted to share. He wanted to be like, Gary, Gina, I want to share this with you. And I want to tell you all about it. And he did. And I was so happy for him because I thought these are such great principles to learn from Coach and to take our business to another level. But at the same time, I was a little bit like, oh, boy, I wish I could be part of that. But there's really with what I was doing, I wouldn't have been able to use it. But one thing that came out with Coach, and I know you're familiar with this, is the strategic couples connection.
Yeah.
And he said, Gina, this will be a great opportunity for you and I to go together. And it's part of the coaching program, but it's with spouses who are married to the entrepreneur. Now, some of them are two entrepreneur spouses, but usually it's one who is and one isn't. And you'll be able to understand the way I'm doing things and the way an entrepreneur thinks, and you'll understand Coach more. And I think it'll help us in our relationship. And so I was like, yeah, let's go. And of course it was travel, which I love. And we'd always go some beautiful places. And I got a chance to meet people like you and Alex who understood what was going on, and people who own businesses. Because a lot of times when you own a business, it's hard to relate to other people who don't. And it was such a great experience. And I attribute a lot of that.
It was like you had a time in the desert.
Yep.
And that was an awakening. That's when we got to the oasis. And it was really the second time that we went where you came out with a spark, because it went beyond that you understood me better.
Yeah.
And it became, you understood your superpower, your unique abilities.
Yeah.
And that set us on a path where you started planning and formulating the next phase or the next chapter in your life professionally, which included growth.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're managing your home is harder than managing your job? You're not alone. Many successful professionals struggle with household inefficiencies. At Intentional Household, we address these challenges head on, helping you reclaim your time and energy. Let us help you build a home that supports your goals. Visit intentionalhousehold.com today. I love hearing how bringing Gina in to Strategic Coach and bringing her in with other, very like-minded couples had an effect. And as you know, Alex and I go as well, and that has certainly helped our relationship. But Gary, you referenced being in a desert. Can you tell us more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, in the multi-level, there was structured, curated content. So you could pick the subjects and pick the audio, and it was all guided towards professional growth and business growth, and had outcomes defined. So you knew what the outcome or what the reason for that content was. The church we attended also had some classes. So for a while, even after the multi-level, the church filled in, and there was personal growth through church
That we did together.
Yeah. And then we happened to move out of the area away from that church. And when we did that, there was no longer any curated content. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to figure out on your own what should I listen to, what should I watch, to both stay motivated because it's not already on your schedule, or it's not something upcoming that you schedule, or to know, is this worth my time? Is this vetted? So it wasn't until Strategic Coach Couples Connection that curated content came back into our life.
Yeah.
For both of us.
To bring us together. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the value of having it, I don't want to say programmed, but being a part of something that structured it for you.
Yeah. A curriculum.
Quite beneficial. Yeah. Curriculum. Okay. Got it. Because I can see there's a lot of learning. There are so many tools that couples can use. There's so much out there, but it's a matter of knowing what one is effective what one should we choose from? It's like there are too many options out there. And so having this kind of curated for you, but then also the other step of being with other people who are like-minded makes a huge impact. And
it really does.
Doing it alone, because while sure you were doing it together as a couple, that it can still be alone. But then when you're doing it with a group of other people who are like-minded, that can really have an impact.
Absolutely.
Yes. And also, you always want to check the fruit on the tree before you plant the same kind of tree. So with all of the content that's out there, all we often know is what's been marketed to us. We don't know really what's going on behind the scenes. Like, we know you and Alex. We know how great your relationship is, how dynamic it is. We know how Alex is the lead entrepreneur and you have entrepreneurial ideas that you're executing and making happen. We know this about you. So when you speak or you share some content, we know the context around it and that it's valuable and safe and not going to lead us in some direction that's a disservice. Many people don't have that insight of who they're listening to. So that curriculum, that curated content, you can see the fruit on the tree. We saw that in multi-level, of course, in church. We knew the reason behind what was being taught. With strategic coach too, we see how the people who are in strategic coach are like-minded and the type of life that they live.
Wow, that's such a good point. And Gary, how are people supposed to know whether that is a good program that is, say, credible and worthy of investing in?
Great question. You have to get out and network. Don't rely on just Google reviews, but actually reach out and talk to people face to face or video to video. Talk to people where you can read in between the lines.
And I always say, trust your gut. I mean, that's my big thing. Trust your gut about someone. And if you do have like a red flag, a little bit of a red flag, don't suppress that red flag. Yeah. If that red flag comes up, then it's like, even though they could be talking and they say all the right things, but trust your gut. Trust your instincts.
I trust Gina's instincts.
I'm pretty good at it.
Listening and following your gut, it goes very far.
It does.
We've talked about a lot of wonderful stuff here. Just one last question for you two. If you could give any sort of advice to partners or spouses who may have lost a connection with one another, what is one piece of advice you would give them if they want to reconnect?
For us personally, I say the number one thing I would highly recommend is marriage counseling. Even if you think your marriage is doing great and there's not arguments, but everything's going well. And we decided probably just here in the last couple of years, we just wanted to go to another level with our marriage. We've, as you know, been together almost 33 years, and there wasn't a lot of strife or anything, right. But I think it was just more, we wanted to take it to another level, intimately, communication wise. I just was excited that we just wanted to go to another level so we can be together another 30 years. I just thought, why not? Again, we're always about learning and learning more about each other. And we decided, let's go to marriage counseling and see where that can take us. And oh my goodness, it's been life-changing. So I would highly, and I actually honestly think we should have done it sooner. Wow. We should have done it sooner. So that's my advice for couples out there who are maybe growing apart or just kind of the relationship is kind of flat. Go to a marriage counselor. And if you find a marriage counselor that you both maybe don't care for, go to another one. It's, everyone's different.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go from what you said, Gina. When we become familiar with something or someone, the excitement wanes. Mm-hmm. If we get tired of a house or tired of a car or something that's inanimate, we can change. We move, we buy a new car. And there's that excitement again of, oh, this is new. It's like we're we're starting. It's a refreshing of a dream. In a marriage, people joke and say, "Oh, it's really expensive," and the expense isn't financial. The expense is that an investment that you've made in all of the years leading up to a point where you're familiar and you're bored is highly valuable and can't be rebuilt or replaced by anybody or with anybody or anything. So by going to counseling, you just get another person, in this case, a professional's perspective. They can help you or help us see the same familiar person through a different lens and a different light.
Yeah, that's been so cool.
There was one exercise we went through after a session. It was just asking a question. And I thought we've been together, 30 years at that point, and thought, I know everything about Gina, but a few questions that I was prompted to ask, I learned something new about Gina.
And same for Gary. Yeah.
And I remember that evening that we went through that exercise, we felt like we were dating.
Oh, that's amazing.
For the first time. Counseling is just coaching for a relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're broken or there's anything, wrong. It just means that you want to be better. So there's my thoughts on what I recommend to everybody, regardless of where you're at in your marriage.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gary and Gina, for joining us today. This has definitely been a wonderful chat, learning about your aspirational and inspirational marriage. And you have given us many wonderful tips on what we as listeners can do to work on our own marriages or relationships. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We will see you next time.